Evidence secured at marker 4. Advise command we are holding the scene.
Copy that. It's getting heavier out here.
Imagine a kidnapper who ignores the family and contacts the press. 3 ransom notes reached the media. We cannot confirm any private letters, but 3 were verified. After receiving 2 of those demands, the Guthrie family actually agreed to pay. Their mother's life was worth more than any price. They valued Nancy above all else, yet their payment was met with a terrifying, total silence from the sender. The writer vanished. No response came, nor any proof of life. Were these messages truly from the person who took her? Stay with us, because by the end, you will hear Savannah's own thoughts on whether these notes were even real. There is a reason why many people following this investigation never fully believed these ransom notes were actually legitimate. It becomes clear when you see how they arrived and the family's response. One word keeps coming to mind: a game. This was not a real negotiation. It was not a genuine demand. It was a game played with a life. Before analyzing the notes, we must establish the foundation. Nancy's identity, her disappearance, and the public nature of this case are impossible to separate from what followed. We need to look at exactly who she is to understand. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old and lived alone in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, in Arizona. She has a fragile heart condition that requires daily life-saving medication. She was last seen on the evening of January 31st, when her son-in-law dropped her off. Tuamaso Chion returned her home around 9:45 or 9:50 p.m., following a normal, pleasant family dinner together. She went inside. He left. Everything appeared to be completely normal there. By dawn, she was gone. Law enforcement found evidence in the following hours that told a very specific and dark story. At precisely 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera was suddenly, manually disconnected. Her pacemaker app lost its connection at approximately 2:30 a.m. This is significant because she was likely no longer inside her house. The app requires proximity to her phone. Investigators found blood on the front porch. DNA tests later confirmed that the blood on the scene belonged to Nancy. The FBI released surveillance footage from her Nest camera, showing a masked individual on the property late. The armed man, roughly 5'9" to 5'10", was described as having an average build and wearing dark, heavy winter clothing. He carried a black 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack while moving around her home. He covered the camera with what looked like a plant before he finally withdrew. It was a calculated move that suggested he knew the layout well. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos admitted he had a gut feeling from the start that the woman had been abducted. "We do, in fact, have a crime," he stated. The blood and the tampered camera tech supported his theory. He mentioned a detail in those early briefings that made the search feel incredibly urgent for everyone involved in Tucson. Nancy was without her heart medication. She literally needs those pills to survive. Her family released a video stating she is without any medicine. She needs it to live and to keep from suffering. She cannot survive very long without it. The FBI joined the search within days as the investigation went into overdrive. Since Nancy is Savannah Guthrie's mother, the disappearance became a massive national news story immediately. That massive visibility changed the case. Within 48 hours of going public, the first ransom notes began to arrive. These communications were strange. Why would a kidnapper use a public platform to demand money? The strategy made no sense. The delivery method was the first red flag. Real kidnappers almost never use the media to send their ransom demands. In actual abductions, the criminal wants to get paid while staying invisible. Publicly announcing a ransom is a massive risk. It invites the whole world to track every single move. Think about the kidnapper's perspective. Their survival depends on remaining totally hidden from the FBI and police. Every channel they use can be traced. Local and federal law enforcement are watching everything. The stakes of being identified are life or death. Why would they go public? How do real kidnappers actually communicate their financial demands? They go private. They use direct phone numbers, burner apps, or notes delivered specifically to the family's front door or mailbox. They keep the conversation between themselves and the payers. They avoid letting the police see the negotiation at all. They stay away from the public eye. They don't want anyone tracking the information they use to collect money. A serious kidnapper would never let their Bitcoin wallet address land on TMZ for the entire country to see. That would be suicide. But on February 2nd, 2026, that is exactly what happened when the first note arrived in Tucson. The demand hit the public news tips portal at KOLD News 13, the CBS affiliate in the city. No private call was made, no lawyer was contacted. It was just a post on a public website. On February 3rd, TMZ received a version. Another Tucson station got one too. Their note demanded $6 million by a February 9th deadline. Was this a real threat or a heartless hoax? The note handed the FBI a digital map directly to the captor's door. Harvey Levin hit CNN to reveal the contents, claiming Nancy was terrified but safe, while stating the sender had blocked all contact. No phone number, no email, nothing. The instructions moved in only one direction. Send the cash to this Bitcoin wallet by the deadline, or she dies. There was no way to ask questions. Negotiations were impossible. A solitary demand went through tabloids with a crypto address that was now totally public knowledge. That specific digital wallet was now public information.
The markers of showing that it's real. The Bitcoin address, we checked immediately, and it's a real address.
Here is why this matters. People wrongly assume Bitcoin is a ghost currency. Whoever wrote this either missed that memo or was banking on the family being totally tech illiterate. Expert Juan Andreas Guerrero Sade told CNN that Bitcoin is incredibly traceable. You can watch every coin move between wallets. Madeleine Kennedy at Chainalysis, a firm specializing in hunting crypto criminals, spoke to CBS News. She debunked the common myth that Bitcoin offers total anonymity. In reality, the system is the exact opposite of private. Once money hits that wallet and moves toward an exchange to become cash, the trail turns bright red. Federal subpoenas allow law enforcement to link that digital trail directly to a person's real identity. Every exchange stores your name, birth date, and address when you sign up. The FBI grabs it. So, the second TMZ posted that wallet on February 3rd, the trap was set. Collecting that ransom became the most scrutinized financial transaction in America. The feds were watching every move. Private firms were watching. Journalists were waiting. Was this a professional or a poseur? A serious criminal planning to steal millions does not give the world a heads up on the destination. This is red flag 1, using public media channels and a transparent wallet instead of a secure, private line. Was this a professional or a poseur? There is also a specific detail within the TMZ note that makes the entire situation feel off. The specific details included in that letter actually raise far more questions than they could ever answer. Harvey Levin told CNN that the note explicitly stated there was no way to reach the sender. That choice of words is telling. It is not the language of a negotiator. A kidnapper needs two-way communication to confirm the money is ready and coordinate the hostage's safe release. Making contact structurally impossible is not a feature of a professional plan. It is a failure. It either suggests extreme paranoia about being caught, or a design choice by someone lying. It looks like a design choice by someone who never intended to follow through on an exchange.
And the person who sent it says, this is going to be the only contact, and you have no way of getting in touch with me. So they made that clear. That's why I believe that they are begging for this, because they have absolutely no avenue to make contact.
The Puma County Sheriff's Department acknowledged the notes, but used very careful language. Then, FBI Special Agent Heath Jonke stepped in. During a February 5th press conference, Jonke pointed out a detail that was very easy to overlook. He mentioned that some details in the notes were already available to the public, specifically, the mentions of an Apple Watch and a floodlight. Those had already appeared in news reports about the scene. This meant those details could not prove the note was actually from the kidnapper. Anyone following the news since February 1st could have fabricated those details. Jonke stopped just short of calling it a hoax. He verified the FBI was investigating, but his focus on public details was telling. Proving these notes were real would be an uphill battle. Then, he said something that redefined the case. He defined exactly how the public should view the family's role in this ransom drama. While law enforcement offers advice, any final decision regarding a ransom payment is ultimately up to the Guthrie family. The Bureau would not make the final call. Whatever the Guthries did next, they were acting strictly on their own authority. But why? The second major red flag appeared when the Guthrie family finally broke their silence. This moment hardened the skepticism for everyone watching. 4 days after Nancy vanished, on February 4th, the family went on the record. Savannah Guthrie sat between her sister Annie and her brother Cameron and posted a video on Instagram, addressed directly to whoever sent those letters. She looked into the lens and said, "We have heard the media reports about a ransom letter. Images can be faked. We are doing everything possible, and we are ready to talk. But we inhabit a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We must know for certain, without a single doubt, she is still alive and in your hands. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out now."
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That family stripped away every excuse the sender had to stay silent. They were totally open. They were publicly declaring their willingness to negotiate. And they asked for one thing, just proof of life. Give them something confirming the person behind these notes actually has Nancy. Nothing at all came back. Not a photo, no audio clip, no video, not even a note in her handwriting, not a reference to a memory that only her own children would be able to recognize. In the 48-plus hours after their first plea and the next video, nothing like proof of life arrived. But there is something crucial we must add to this, a detail that made the proof of life question here more complicated than in almost any previous kidnapping case. Savannah raised the issue in that very video. She said we live in worlds where voices and images are easily manipulated. That's a direct reference to AI deepfakes, the ability to create convincing media of a real person that does not represent anything actually real. Agent Jenke confirmed this at his press conference. He said with AI these days, you can make videos that appear very real, so we cannot just take a video and trust that as proof of life. Essentially, even if the sender had sent a video of Nancy holding a newspaper, the FBI could not accept that as authentic without some extensive forensic analysis. A video could be synthesized from old footage of Nancy. Audio could be cloned from recordings. The family understood this, which is why Savannah named it as a challenge. Verifiable proof of life in 2026 requires something I cannot replicate. That raises the bar significantly for what counts as confirmation. All of that said, the sender sent absolutely nothing at all. Not a deepfake, not a real photograph, nothing at all. For everyone already skeptical, that missing proof settled it. Think about the logic. If you are holding someone and you want to get paid, proof of life is the one thing you provide immediately when a family asks. It costs you absolutely nothing. It makes payment far more likely. Withholding it makes no strategic sense for a kidnapper who genuinely wants to collect. It actively destroys your leverage. The only scenarios where withholding proof makes sense are you do not actually have the person and hope they panic into paying anyway, or you cannot prove she's alive because she is not. Here is where the story gets messy, because right in the middle of this, a man in California made everything harder to follow. His name is Derek Kala, and he is 42 years old from Hawthorne, California, specifically. He had nothing to do with Nancy's disappearance. But on February 4th, 2026, minutes after the family released their first big Instagram video, he used a VIP app to generate fake phone numbers and sent text messages to 2 members of the family. Savannah's sister, Annie Guthrie Tion, and her husband, Tuamaso Chion. The message said, "Did you get the Bitcoin we're waiting on our end for now?" 3 minutes later, he called a third relative from that same fake number. That call lasted 9 seconds. When the FBI arrested him the following day, He said he sent messages just to see if they'd respond now. He found their contact information through simple online searches. He had no inside knowledge. He did not know who took Nancy or where she was. He watched a story on the news, found contact information, and just decided to insert himself. The FBI traced the fake number to his Gmail address. The IP address led back to his home. He was charged with 2 crimes: transmitting a ransom demand in interstate commerce and using a telecommunications device to anonymously harass a person. Released on a $20,000 bond with electronic monitoring and no contact, his case is still pending. When arrested, Kala was already facing separate and very serious felony charges. In October 2025, he was one of 13 county employees charged with allegedly stealing state pandemic benefits. Prosecutors accused him of fraudulently claiming nearly $10,000 in benefits while still receiving his regular county paycheck. The FBI criminal complaint made one point that people needed to read carefully, and most didn't. Authorities realized the man sending ransom texts held a chilling secret. He isn't the kidnapper. He lacks any connection to the original notes. He is a separate individual who saw an opportunity and simply took it. Federal prosecutors described him as an imposter who tried to take advantage of a family's deep grief. The reason Kala's role matters to the broader ransom note narrative is entirely about timing. His arrest was announced on February 5th. The same day, the FBI held their press conference confirming the original ransom note investigation existed. Same news cycle, same afternoon. For anyone skimming the headlines, it seemed like law enforcement had caught the kidnapper. They definitely had not. The person who targeted Cole, TMZ, and KGN, the one the family actually engaged, was never identified and remains a mystery, but someone was watching. Heath Janke, the Phoenix FBI special agent in charge, issued a warning clearly aimed at predatory people like Kala. To those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this nightmare situation, we will investigate and ensure you face justice. The warning was vital, but the true note sender was gone. Another predator was waiting. That predator appeared in a third separate communication around February 11th. TMZ received another note from someone who was not claiming to be the kidnapper at all. This person claimed they knew exactly who he was, and they wanted 1 Bitcoin, worth roughly $66,000 at the time, which was actually more than the FBI reward at that point. To trade the suspect's name, they claimed they'd already reached Cameron Guthrie and Annie Sion. TMZ staff noted the tone felt wrong compared to previous notes and handed it over to federal agents. I know what I witnessed 5 days ago across the border, and someone told me to stay quiet, so I know him. And Nancy was absolutely with them. This was the second time a source suggested more than one person was involved in the crime. They mentioned a lead suspect and several accomplices. It was right there in the text. By mid-February, the information environment looked like a disaster. You had the first 3 media notes, the February 6th follow-up that sparked the video, and a Californian arrested for fake texts, who has zero connection to the case, and a third-party informant claiming to know the kidnapper's identity for a price. Multiple actors, conflicting agendas, and total chaos regarding what was true and what was a lie, and no proof of life anywhere in any of it. The public narrative had hardened. This was a game. Multiple people exploiting a tragedy, playing with family emotions while the real story remained unresolved. Then Savannah spoke. And then Savannah Guthrie sat down on March 26, 2026, and drew a line through that conclusion. 54 days after her mother vanished, Savannah sat with Hoda Kotb for her first televised interview since February 1st. She had been on leave from the Today Show for 7 long weeks. She told Kotb she wakes up every night in the dark, picturing the absolute terror her mother must feel. She called the thoughts unthinkable, yet they are the only things her mind can process.
I imagine her terror. And it is unthinkable, but those thoughts demand to be thought.
Yeah.
And I will not hide my face.
In those quiet weeks between February 10th and March 26th, the stretch between the ransom notes, stopping, and Savannah's interview, the investigation continued. But the public record became sparser than ever before. Law enforcement returned to search Annie Guthrie's home for a second time during the second week of February. Crews from local stations watched FBI agents and sheriff's deputies go door to door in the neighborhood near the home. Investigators scoured the surrounding area. More tips poured in. The FBI launched the billboard campaign, and slowly, without a named suspect or a public breakthrough, the Nancy Guthrie case began to fade from the front pages. Savannah returned to New York briefly in early March, visiting the Today studio for the first time since her mother disappeared. A spokesperson for the show said she planned to return to air, but she remained focused on supporting her family and bringing Nancy home. She had moved between locations multiple times while staying in Arizona to oversee the search. At one point, she told Cobb, the family had to leave a property in the dark because of people showing up outside. The investigation had not just consumed their time, it had restructured their entire lives. She said in the Cobb interview that she found it unbearable when speculation spread online that someone in the family was responsible. The Guthrie family has been officially cleared. Navigating those toxic public theories while grieving her mother felt like a layer of pure cruelty added to an already horrific and unimaginable situation. Someone needs to do the right thing, she pleaded. We are in agony. It is truly unbearable. She told Cobb that in the first hours of February 1st, her sister Annie called her and said, a masked gunman stood over an 84-year-old woman's bed while she slept. Savannah was at Carson Daly's when the call came. Annie was in a total panic. Then her brother, Cameron, who has a military background, and Savannah said understood the stakes immediately, told her via phone what he suspected. He said, I think she has been kidnapped for ransom. Savannah told Cotby she resisted the idea. Her mind simply refused to process something so horrific. Then she asked the question she already feared. Do you think this is because of me? He said, I am sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe. That conversation haunts her every day. It is too painful to think I brought a predator to her bedside. This happened because of me. I am so sorry, Mommy. I am sorry to my sister, my brother, my kids, my nephew, and Tommy, my brother-in-law. Her guilt is sharp and personal. The possibility that her career and public face made her elderly mother a target in the middle of the night. Could her fame be the reason for this? She described the surreal horror of filming those ransom videos that millions watched on a loop across every major news network. How can we be making a video for a kidnapper who took an 84-year-old woman in her pajamas with no shoes and no medicine? Why must we beg for mercy for this defenseless person? Not a media strategy. A family doing the only thing available to them. She said the FBI's surveillance footage was absolutely terrifying. Then she shared something even harder to hear. I cannot bear the thought that she saw him standing over her bed. I cannot. It is too much. She was talking about the masked figure with the backpack and gun caught on Nancy's camera on February 1st, and the terror Nancy felt before being taken. She also confirmed a detail the family had never shared before. Nancy's front door had been left propped open when first responders arrived. The initial assumption was a medical episode until they found the blood. Along with the blood, they found the disconnected camera and that propped door. Regarding the ransom notes, Savannah said many arrived, but most were fake. From what I understand, the majority of them were not real, and I never saw them. But someone sending fake notes to a grieving family really needs to look at their own soul. But I believe the 2 notes we actually responded to were genuine. I tend to believe those were real. 54 days passed, with law enforcement staying silent on the notes. For 54 days, they said the investigation was ongoing, without confirming any authenticity. Then Savannah went on national television and drew a direct line. Most of the notes were fake, but she believes the 2 her family answered were real. The word responded is where this gets very specific. The family made their February 4th video after the initial reports of a ransom demand. Sources told ABC News the February 7th video promising payment was a direct response to a second message call received on February 6th. The news director at Cole confirmed that second note arrived just before noon that Friday. It was totally different from the first, not a typical demand, but something in it forced the family to promise payment within 24 hours. That February 7th video lasted 20 seconds. Savannah sat between Cameron and Annie. She said, "We received your message, and we understand. We beg you to return our mother so we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is valuable to us, and we will pay." It was a complete shift from 4 days earlier. February 4th was about listening. February 7th was about paying. Something in that February 6th message moved the family from being open to being fully committed. Savannah says she believes those notes were real even though the money was never collected. That belief changes everything. For 7 weeks, the official police stance was total neutrality. They were investigating the notes. They took them seriously but gave no confirmation of authenticity. Savannah's March 26 statement shifts the narrative in a way the police have not. She is not a detective. She cannot forensically prove the notes, like the FBI can, but she was the person those notes were meant for. She is the person who went on camera twice and made a commitment to pay. She believes those notes came from her mother's captors, making the empty Bitcoin wallet the biggest unanswered question in this entire case. She said this on March 26, 2026, still having no idea where her mother is. The second deadline, February 9th, came and went. $1 million fortune sat waiting for a kidnapper who never called back. Savannah posted a video that day, pleading for tips and insisting her mother was still alive. Bring her home. No mention of cash, no police talk. Then, on February 10th, the Arizona family news cycle broke a major story. Reporters at KLD's sister station confirmed that at least one transaction was recorded to the original Bitcoin wallet address at 5 p.m. Arizona time. The amount stayed secret, and no one confirmed the source. TMZ reporting on March 26th answered the main question. The ransom was never paid. Whatever moved into that digital wallet on February 10th didn't represent the completion of the multi-million-dollar ransom demand. Harvey Levin called the situation utterly baffling. The family had publicly promised to pay and were in constant contact with the FBI, yet the payment never moved. He said he had no way of knowing if there was a change of heart or if the FBI ultimately advised the family against finishing. After February 10th, communication stopped entirely. No follow-up note, no new demand, and zero contact. The sender, whoever they were, went completely and totally silent. 3 logical explanations fit these facts without us having to invent theories that we simply cannot prove right now. The first possibility is that whoever sent those ransom notes eventually lost nerve. They designed a demand around public media channels, and the response it triggered wasn't a quiet private transaction. It was a national news event they didn't anticipate. FBI press conferences. A California man was arrested within 24 hours for sending a copycat text, proving the Bureau was watching every single angle with extreme speed and precision. Blockchain experts on news channels explained exactly how Bitcoin is traced and how federal subpoenas produce a full account holder identity in very short order. That ransom note appeared February 3rd. By February 5th, just 2 days later, the FBI held press conferences, an arrest was made, and every major news outlet in the country had written about the total traceability of the Bitcoin wallet. What may have seemed like an anonymous demand when planned looked completely different in that loud, public environment. Moving millions into that publicly known address and routing it toward an exchange felt like stepping directly into a certain arrest. So, they walked away. But walking away from the money doesn't resolve what happened to the hostage, and the silence since then offers no real answer here. The second theory is that they wanted to collect but found themselves unable to do so. This wasn't a loss of nerve, but a trap they built by choosing public channels and known wallets. Law enforcement, blockchain analysts, and journalists were all monitoring that specific digital address simultaneously and openly. The moment those funds moved toward a crypto exchange, the forensic analysis would begin, and it wouldn't stop until it reached a real identity. They likely concluded there was simply no exit path that did not end in identification. The wallet stays empty, not because they abandoned the demand entirely, but because following through had become the most direct route to being caught. In that version, the question becomes much darker. When your leverage is permanently uncashable, what do you do with the person you were using as leverage? The third explanation is the one that no honest reading of this case can leave out. It deserves stating clearly. If Nancy Guthrie isn't alive, there is nothing left to exchange. The demand for a safe return cannot be met if one side of that transaction is already gone. In that scenario, the behavior of the note sender is exactly what you would expect from someone in that spot. Complete silence, no new communication, and no attempt to claim any portion of a reward that eventually exceeded $1 million. No leverage means no reason to surface. Appearing now only creates the high risk of discovery. And so the silence stretches on. A silence that is not random, or the absence of an answer, but that may be the answer itself. The investigation remains open. The FBI hasn't officially stated it shifted from search to recovery. Sheriff Nano said in February he believed Nancy was out there, but the facts aren't easy to reconcile with optimism. An 84-year-old woman with a fragile heart condition was taken, without her daily medication on the night of January 31st. No proof of life was ever delivered despite deadlines and a family ready to pay. A reward exceeding $1 million has been active for weeks, and not one person with knowledge of Nancy's location has come forward. The investigation generated an extraordinary public response. The tip line exceeded 18,000 calls, with 4,000 plus arriving within a single 24-hour period. Federal agents eventually took the search regional, plastering the victim's face across massive digital billboards in Texas, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. The Bureau pushed the security video into the public eye, ensuring that masked silhouette was visible on every screen in the country. Andrew McCabe, the former number 2 at the FBI, noted this rollout mirrored the exact playbook used after the Boston Marathon bombing. It is a high-stakes move reserved for when every internal lead hits a dead end, and your only hope is a stranger's recognition. But was anyone actually watching? Millions watched, including former FBI supervisor James Galliano, who scrutinized the tape and realized the suspect handled his weapon like a complete amateur. Search teams eventually pushed further out, discovering a pair of black gloves that were immediately rushed to the lab for DNA testing. Detectives swarmed the neighborhood to map out every movement, demanding every scrap of video recorded since January 1st. They scrubbed data from Ring cameras, personal cell phones, and even Tesla Sentry modes across the entire zip code. Then, a name finally surfaced. By the middle of February, police detained a FedEx driver named Carlos Palazuelos, a man who had been dropping off packages at Nancy's house right when she vanished. After a grueling interrogation, investigators let him walk, citing a total lack of evidence to hold him. But the story took a dark turn on February 11th when a mysterious third-party letter showed up at the TMZ offices. The writer offered to unmask the kidnapper for 1 Bitcoin, specifically mentioning they didn't want to get screwed over like that Carlos guy. How did they know his name? That specific phrasing proved the sender was monitoring the news cycle in real time, reacting to Palazuelos being cleared almost instantly. As the days turned into weeks, the bounty for information exploded, with the FBI doubling their initial $50,000 offer to a full $100,000. Then the Guthrie family upped the ante, pledging a staggering $1 million for any tip that brought Nancy home safely. A nonprofit called 88 Crime tossed in another $12,500, bringing the total pot to over $1.2 million by late February. It was a life-changing fortune, but the silence was deafening. That figure represents one of the most massive rewards ever seen in a modern American missing persons investigation. Yet, despite the money and the heat, there were 0 arrests, 0 suspects, and that masked figure in the video remained a ghost. Speaking with Todd Kotubo on March 26th, Savannah insisted the hunt is still active and that detectives are working around the clock. But as of that afternoon, the case remained stuck in neutral, with no major breakthroughs to report. Why was the most powerful government on Earth failing? We have to be honest here. Going 8 weeks without a single lead in a case, this high profile is statistically staggering. The FBI's Phoenix field office threw every resource they had at this, from forensic experts to boots on the ground. Pima County Sheriff's deputies were working alongside them, and the case even landed on the Resolute desk at the White House. In early February, President Trump took to Truth Social to address the disappearance personally. He told his followers he'd spoken to Savannah and ordered every federal agency to assist local cops immediately, fueling a massive wave of national media interest. We're talking about 18,000 tips, multi-state billboards, and a $1.2 million bounty. All of that, and still, nothing. Millions have scrutinized that grainy doorbell footage of the masked man. We know his height, his build, and even the exact brand of his backpack. Yet, as of March 26, 2026, he remains anonymous. How does someone stay hidden in an era of facial recognition and advanced blockchain forensics? When $1 million reward can't buy a name, it suggests we aren't dealing with a typical criminal. Or does it? Savannah's voice cracked as she told reporters, "We are in agony. We are in agony. It is unbearable, begging for someone to do the right thing." She's convinced those ransom notes were legitimate, and that her mother was snatched specifically to get to her, a thought that haunts her every single night. Every time she sat in front of a camera, she was speaking directly to the captors, hoping Nancy could hear her. She gave them everything they wanted, but she never got the one thing she begged for: a single photo or a recording proving her mother was still alive. She publicly promised, "We will pay," shouting into a void that has never once shouted back. That total silence after the family agreed to the terms is the most chilling part of the investigation, and the one part officials won't explain. Police won't say why that money was never sent, or if the FBI stepped in to block the transaction. We don't know if there was a secret message after her public plea that changed everything. Was there a hidden warning? According to TMZ on March 26th, the only certainty is that the Bitcoin wallet was watched, but the funds were never transferred. The rest is a mystery. That crypto wallet is still sitting there on the public blockchain, a permanent digital tombstone. The cash never moved, and the person who demanded it has vanished back into the shadows of the internet. You know our rule. We only report when we have the facts. We are staying on this story until Nancy comes home. Hit subscribe and turn on those notifications now, because this case is a powder keg that could blow at any second. And when it does, we will be the ones to break it.